When you're bringing home a new orchid, there's just a few little things that you need to look at to ensure that you're not bringing any unwanted things into your orchid collection or the area around it. So whether you bought it online from a nursery, from a reputable grower, or from a plant swap, anything, you still have to just go through your orchid carefully and check that you're not bringing anything dangerous into your collection. Welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. What are the things that we need to look out for on, for instance, this orchid that we've just received? Well, first of all, we're going to be looking at the leaves of the orchid because that's generally the most obvious place to start. We can see a little bit of this wrinkling or pleating in the leaves, so it lets us know that the orchid is a bit dehydrated. We can see also the pseudobulbs are a bit wrinkled, so definitely dehydration has been taking place here. And when there's dehydration that's been taking place, the next place we're going to have to look in is the roots to see why, but we'll get to that. We'll also notice with the leaves we have some of these black spotting, we have leaf tips that are dying off, and this yellow haloing around the edges and tips of the leaves. This is a surefire sign of fungal disease. This is anthracnose, and also by some of this other spotting is probably cercospora as well. It's nothing unusual for orchids to have these fungal diseases, but still we need to make sure that it's treated so that we don't cause any infections in our other plants. We know that's always going to happen, but we just need to be able to keep it under control. The leaves are a good color, they're not too dark green, so this orchid wasn't being kept in too much shade. But now we have to see why we're getting all of these signs of dehydration. Also now examining the pseudobulbs, we notice this off color that's happening along the edges of the pseudobulbs and a little bit squishy. So this says there's some sort of rot that's setting in. This is probably some sort of bacterial rot, so we're going to have to make sure that we can sort that out too. So there we go, we have fungal and bacterial diseases already. And then when further inspecting the roots, these outside roots, we can tell that they still relatively new, fresh roots, but the ends of them have been burnt, they blackened. So that's either a sign of overuse of feeding, where they burnt the tips with high concentrations of inorganic plant foods, or that it's been exposed to up against something that's got a high heat, or a bacterial or fungal infection that's hit those tips of the roots. The roots are still relatively turgid further up. It's not a complete root rot. So now going in to inspect the roots, we need to unpot it, take all the media out. And often when you're doing this and you have this like musky sort of scent, you know that there's fungal spores that have been growing in the media itself. And there we have back bulbs that were sunk deep into the pot, and we can see that they are already starting to rot. We don't want to have organic material like this shoved deep into a pot, because that's always going to cause problems. These will just land up rotting away and bringing in bacteria and fungal infections into your orchids. The pathogenic fungi and bacteria love these old back pseudobulbs to really propagate well in. So to start with, that just needs to be pulled away and removed. And then we'll just clean up the orchid, remove all the old potting media from any of the roots. We'll remove all the old dead roots, and we'll move all this debris from around the sides of the pseudobulbs to ensure that any treatment we give it can be effective and nothing can hide in any nooks or crannies that will allow them to escape our treatments. Always remember, just be careful when removing these sheaths from around these pseudobulbs, is the way Oncidiums grow is by having these dormant buds at the bases of their leaves. This is where the new growth will happen from, and we don't want to destroy those buds as we tear off these old leaf sheaths. We'll also notice that this plant has only a single lead, which also shows it's been under stress, because invariably Oncidium hybrids like this will generally grow shoots out of either side of each pseudobulb. So that way you'll end up with multiple growing heads growing out in different directions. So this is just saying that this plant wasn't the happiest of plants, and it was definitely ready to be looked after. And inspecting these roots, we can see there's not terribly much root rot involved, but some of these roots have desiccated completely and formed these dried out tubes. So there's not too much infection in amongst the roots. It's just those back bulbs that were looking dicey. Okay, now that we've removed all of that root volume, what you can do is you can then rinse this through under running water just to remove any other excess that might be hanging around. And then after that, I like to take my hydrogen peroxide. The hydrogen peroxide, I'm just going to give this plant a gentle spray with a 3% solution, just to ensure that I kill any bacteria that might be growing in and around the plant itself. So we'll just ensure we get in between all those gaps, give the roots a good spray. And we're just going to give the entire plant just a quick little once over with this hydrogen peroxide. This is not a strong enough solution to actually damage the plant itself, but it is strong enough to kill any of those bacteria that are lingering. Now with hydrogen peroxide, this is already starting to react on the plant. So all we need to do is then set this aside, allow this to dry out, and by the time it's dried out, the complete peroxide reaction would have taken place, and it will no longer interfere with any other treatments that we are going to be doing on the plant itself. So let's just set this aside to dry. Now this media is going to go straight into the rubbish bin. I'm not going to be putting this into the compost heap or anywhere else. For one, it's got polystyrene in it, and I don't want anything that's in here to infect anything else. If you're throwing away media that's got fungal spores in it, all your fungus will do is carry on growing in the compost heap, and they'll release more spores again, and that will get back to your orchids. So this needs to go into the rubbish bin. The pots, we then wash our pots, heat treat them, and then give them a spray with our hydrogen peroxide and let them dry, and then we reuse our plastic pots. And now that we know our orchid is nice and dry from that hydrogen peroxide, it's done its trick, the full reaction has taken place, and there's nothing that's going to affect our fungal treatment. And we already know, we identified that this has at least some form of anthracnose that's attacking it. We're going to use Benomil. It's extremely effective against especially anthracnose, as well as most other fungal plant diseases. It's a systemic fungicide, and that's what we want when bringing something like this in. We want to ensure that our plant itself absorbs the fungicide, and any residual fungus that's growing inside or outside the plant has died. So remember, when mixing this, stick to your manufacturer's instructions, and please always wear protective gear, as these are dangerous chemicals. When treating our plant, what we're going to start with is we're going to start treating the leaves first, ensuring both the top sides and undersides of the plant, of the leaves, are covered. And then we'll move the way down the pseudobulbs. And then to the root volume. We're ensuring that every part of the plant is saturated in this fungicide so that it can absorb the maximum quantity of it. So it ensures that it kills all the fungus on the plant and in the plant. Again here, this we're going to leave to dry for approximately 24 hours before we handle it again. Now that our plant is dried and been treated and we can handle it safely again, we're going to have a deeper look in again at those pseudobulbs that we're looking a bit off color on the edges, and have a look to see what's happening there. And one of the reasons that we did not use our garlic and ginger sprays on this was because we weren't sure where this had come from. We weren't sure how it had been treated. We wanted to be 100% sure that we had killed any fungus or bacteria that was on this so that we don't spread it into our other orchids. So now we'll have a look at these back bulbs more closely. Having cleaned up, we can see this almost sickly puce green color. And the edges are soft and squishy. It carries on through these three back bulbs. We can see this discoloration here on the side. And to be safe, I'm going to remove all of this and only have these two bulbs, these two pseudobulbs left. That way I can be more assured of a completely healthy plant. So again, our hydrogen peroxide onto our cutting tools so that we don't spread anything further. And we'll just go in and cut through the rhizome. Okay, and we've got a nice clean cut. Everything looks good. So what we just want to do is just go back through the previous pseudobulbs to check if there's anything that we might be missing. We just cut through, and there we can see why these were starting to appear squishy on their sides with this sickly green color, the sickly green discoloration happening in a V shape down into the rhizome. We have this purple coloration around the outside edge of the rhizome. This is a clear sign of Fusarium. And Fusarium works up through the base, works up through the roots into the rhizome, and then will slowly spread along the rhizome all the way through to the plant. So just ensure that we've got nice sanitized hands again so that we can deal with this piece. This seems to be completely free of it, but just to be sure, from now on, what we're going to do is we're going to plant it into a clear plastic pot so that we can keep an eye on these roots to make sure nothing starts to happen. I don't generally plant in clear plastic pots, but in cases like this, where I need to ensure that I've got a pest-free plant and that the roots are going to grow well, it's a good idea. Because the Oncidium group of orchids like consistent moisture, I'm going to be using coconut husk to help hold the water. I'm going to be using bark as a bulking media, and I'm going to be using charcoal to give those air spaces and to help cleanse water. So we'll just make a mix of that and use that to pot up our orchid. I'm ensuring that this specific media has got lots of drainage because we want to ensure that we don't have any recurrence of those fungal diseases. So we can just carefully fill that in around the plant. Checking that there's not too many big air gaps. There are air gaps, but nothing too large that is going to desiccate the roots. And ensure that it's fairly stable, which is the one nice thing about using the charcoal. It helps keep a more stable mix for your plant to stay upright. So there we go. If we can see in, we've got a nice aerated mix that's still going to hold the moisture with all of that coir chunks that are in there. And now this we're just going to leave and let alone for about 1 to 2 weeks to see how it starts to get along. If we notice that there's any further deterioration other than a little bit of desiccation, then we need to look in deeper again and possibly say, I'm not taking this orchid into my collection. We can also effectively remove really seriously damaged parts of the leaves, just to ensure that although the fungus has been destroyed, we're not taking any chances. So we'll just remove those off, keeping sanitized equipment again. And there we go. He's looking like a reasonable orchid at the moment, and we're just going to keep an eye on him. We're going to keep him in a high humidity environment, but we're going to be withholding water and feeding for at least 2 to 3 weeks. So just with these easy steps, by keeping sanitized equipment, inspecting your plant as you bring it into your environment, and then treating and quarantining your plant. This is the way you're going to ensure that the rest of your collection is safe, even if an orchid that you're bringing in is noticed to have some sort of infection involved. So always please keep a wary eye open for anything on those new orchids you bring in to save the rest of your others. And always remember again to inspect those pieces that you have cut off that you're worried about, to see that there's nothing that you may have missed in your initial diagnosis, like this Fusarium. Fusarium is definitely something we don't want spread in amongst our other orchids. Remember to always do those double checks to ensure you've got the right treatment for your orchid and you can be sure it's pest-free. We are continually adding new information on that Buy Me a Coffee link down below. Please feel free to go have a look at the information we offer down there. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.